What's up, pagan people? Drew here. First, let me apologize for the lighting. It is a dark and stormy day where I live today, and I just went with it. I'm not going to get out my little O light or anything. You can still see me, so. This video is sort of a viewer response. I've had a couple questions about my process when it comes to shamanic journey, so I thought I'd share. One subscriber in particular was sort of asking for advice, and I figured the best way, like with anything for me, is just to share my experience, and maybe that can be a benefit because, again, I am not an expert or an authority on anything. So first off, the very first shamanic journey I ever took was very, very short. And I would say, I don't know, the way I do it today is completely different than the way I did it then, but it was probably definitely one of the most, and probably the most powerful journey I ever did. Even though it was very short and simple and non-traditional. I just went out into my backyard and sat in the quiet, and I set the intention that I wanted to meet my spirit animal. And it probably lasted about 15 minutes, and by the end of it, not even by the end of it, halfway through, I was crying. And it was a very powerful, moving experience. Not only did I meet my spirit animal, I asked for the name, which I didn't like, so I don't call him by that, and he doesn't care. And I also asked what his purpose in my life was, and I was given sort of memories that helped me figure that out. It just sort of settled inside me. I don't know how to explain it. At any rate, it was a very powerful experience. That is not at all the way I journey today. I have sort of developed a ritualistic aspect to my journey, in all honesty. Sorry if you can hear the wind and the rain. I apologize. It's really loud. It's, like I said, it's been pouring its ass off. So first off, I really like drumming to lull me into a journey state. There are many methods people will use, but I just resonate completely with drumming. And actually, I have a favorite. There's an album called Shamanic Vision Journey by David and Steve Gordon. And that is my absolute all-time favorite. There's lots of animal, like birds and nature sounds in the background with the drumming, and there's flutes, and there's all kind of beautiful elements to the music, and it doesn't sound canned. Sometimes these things sound fake because people are recreating the sounds on keyboards and whatnot, and it's not that there's something wrong with that, it just doesn't resonate with me, and I can't lose myself in it, if you will. So that is my go-to. I put that on. Before I start it, though, I always personally set up a grid. Let me preface this. In the beginning, I would just lay down on the floor with the drumming. And that's all I did. And I would go into journey, and I had great journeys. But I am a crystal chick. I work with crystals. I love crystals. They are my friends, my allies, and my family, energetically speaking. So of course, I love to pull them in when I journey. So over time it evolved. I first began, the mer-ka-ba is a very powerful symbol for me. So I would create a mer-ka-ba grid on the floor with crystals. Now over time I have gotten my hands on these. They are amethyst. Amethyst is my birthstone, and it is a highly spiritually charged stone. It has a lot of amazing properties, and I have 6 of these. They're these little beads. They are beads. They're supposed to be made into like a necklace, but I use them to create the points of the mer-ka-ba. Big on the floor, enough room for me to lay in the center of it. And I, of course, I'm of the idea that a grid Like, I can lay crystals out and they have this wonderful energy, but to complete the circuit, to create the grid, I have to energetically connect the crystals. That's my own personal view, so I do that. So I will create the grid before I lay down. It's all out of order, but I lay the stones down, these amethysts down, and make sure that there's room for me to lay in between them. Then I have this big chunk of amethyst that usually sits at my feet, right close to touching my feet. Again, this is not necessary, and I did not do so in the beginning, but I have it. And I'm trying to create an atmosphere, an energy. And so I'm pulling in these crystals. So this sits very close to my feet. And then behind my head, I put my geode. And again, I've only had this geode for, I don't know, 4 years. I don't know. It hasn't been a super long time. So before that, when I was doing Journey, because I've been doing Journey for probably 12 years, I didn't have this. It's not a requirement. It's just, it creates this energy for me. It gets me into this space I want to be in. And there is this ritualistic element that helps, again, focus me into this mindset. We're going to journey now. And brings me into alignment. And then I've had this forever, and I have journeyed with this for a very long time, and I usually just hold it on my chest. As I said, none of this is required. So I have the geode behind, where my head will be. I have the smaller cluster where my feet will be. And I just have the point setting on the floor near where my chest will be, or where my hand can get to it easily. I'll start the music. I'll step into the mer-ka-ba that I've created with these crystals, the little amethyst beads, and then I will connect them, creating the grid, and I will lay down. And I usually take a few deep breaths, and I just set whatever intent it is. So if my intent is that I would really like to meet with one of my guides and interact with them, I'll set that intention. If my intent is just to do whatever happens, then that's my intent. And of course, just because I set an intention doesn't mean that's what's going to happen, because oftentimes it's just whatever it is. And Journey is something that it's like lucid dreaming. I have control, but I don't at the same time. I can control myself, but I can't necessarily control what's going on around me, if that makes sense. Okay, so the next step is, and again, this is not the first few times I did Journey, I didn't have this in place, but it did, it only took a few times before I realized I needed an entry and an exit. I needed a place to enter the journey through and to come back out of the journey through. And I will admit that I don't always come back out through. Sometimes I just come out of Journey wherever I am. I personally don't look at this as wrong. I don't question it. It happened that way for a reason. I have come to a place, it's just like with your intuition. I have come to a place where I've experienced things during Journey that I am confident in my journey, that I'm not making it up. So I just let it happen organically, and whatever happens, happens, and I'm okay with that. Because if I tried to control it, it wouldn't be authentic, it wouldn't be real, and I wouldn't be getting what I needed out of it. I don't sit back afterwards and wonder, is that what was supposed to happen? Is that how it's supposed to work? Because who's to say how it's supposed to work? Yes, there may be a sort of theme, an overall vague experience, some sort of generic outline, but to each individual, it's going to be whatever it is. And your journey is not going to look like my journey. So all I'm trying to say is, don't doubt the process. Don't doubt, just let it be. Just set some intentions, do what you need to do to get yourself into that space, and then let it happen organically. And don't think, is that how it's supposed to happen? Because obviously that's how it's supposed to happen for you. That's why it happened that way. All right, so now I have a place I go. I will describe my place to you. I don't mind. I close my eyes and I get into this space where I start to visualize my entry point. And for me, I am in this huge wooded area, and it's very dark because of all the trees, but it's a beautiful, bright, sunny day. And I know this because there's a break in the canopy and the sun shines through, and there's a huge tree. And beside the huge tree is a small sort of oubliette, sort of little pond. And a lot of times I will get into the water and cleanse myself before heading off somewhere else. And all kinds of things happen. It's rarely ever the same. It's never the same twice in a row, let's put it that way. Sometimes I dive down into the water and swim out somewhere. Sometimes I climb up into the tree, and sometimes I climb down through the roots, and sometimes I just take trails that lead off in other directions through the woods and just end up in any given place. Sometimes I go to the upper and sometimes I go to the lower. I will say that personally, I typically go to the lower. I don't try, that's just what happens. And I assume that there are reasons for that. So this is my entry point. It looks the same every time I go there. At this point, it's like coming home. It's so familiar. And again, here I am. Oh, we're going into journey. It just sets the tone, sets the pace, and gets me in this headspace that I need to be in to do what it is I'm going to do. I have fallen asleep once or twice in these 12 years or so of journeying. It is unusual for me. Typically, just like with meditation, if you fall asleep, it's because you're very tired and you needed rest. But most of the time, I do not fall asleep. It is this weird state in between awake and asleep, and I don't know how to describe it other than you are aware that you have a body, but you're just so removed from it, and I am so in this space that when I come out of it, it's almost like waking up. It's like, oh yeah, okay. But it's not quite the same as going to sleep. And it doesn't feel the same. It's not the same experience at all. But I do lose a vast majority of the world around me, much more than in meditation when I'm doing journey. Again, you're going to be able to find lots of information in books and on the internet about journey and how people do journey. And I just do it the way I do it. It is something that came organically to me. Again, I wasn't taught this. I just felt called to do this, to get into this altered state of consciousness and see what happened. And so I do. And I've had some really powerful experiences. And then I've had some not so powerful. They're just sort of, oh, okay. Same as during meditation, really. Sometimes, you'll do a meditation and it just clicks something inside of you, or something very interesting happens. And other times it's like, oh, okay, well, that was relaxing. I do not set specific times for my journey. I just let them happen again organically. I have done group journeys where there is a sort of set time or what have you. And sometimes, honestly, sometimes those are great and sometimes not so much. I don't know, somehow you'll get in the room with the right people and your journeys will sort of touch each other. I don't know how else to put that. There'll be a theme running through journeys. Maybe not every single one in the room, but you'll see a theme running through. And then other times it just doesn't click. You're not on a soul level with these people. I don't know what it is, but so basically what I'm saying is, as far as my journey goes, it's about creating an atmosphere. It's about setting a mood and a tone and getting yourself into the space. So maybe you light a certain incense every time you journey, and when you smell that, you're like, oh, it's time to journey. These are what I call triggers. They get you where you need to go. So, I create a crystal grid and have drumming. I really don't light incense or anything while I journey, although now I'm wondering if I'll play with that in the future. But there are all kinds of ways to sort of set it up. Having this entry point, this place you go every time to enter into your journey. things like that can be very helpful for getting you to where you need to go, basically. I don't know if this was helpful at all. It's very rambly as usual. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I don't know what that would be. I just, like I said, had some questions about Journey, and not being an authority or an expert, thought the best way to try to help others, to try to empower others to find their own ways, their own methods, their own steps, would be to share mine. So that's what I've done. Thanks so much for listening, guys. And until next time, much love and gratitude.